Hello, everyone. Welcome to Liberation Labs. Give everybody a moment to come in. I found some background music for us to play and jam to so we get people to come in. Welcome. Welcome all. How are you doing today? How's your body feeling? Did you find any joy in your day to day? Did you find any moments you were excited? Who was God today in your life? Come in. Tell me about how your day goes. It's Monday evening, Liberation Labs on your way home. Checking us out. Some reason I can't find it. On this here Monday. Wait, this will be here. Hey. Welcome. I feel like I should make up a song. Welcome. Hey, welcome. Welcome. Hey, welcome. Hey, welcome. Then everybody come in, get time to share. All right, I've been pressing a lot of buttons. But we're going to go ahead and get started on this evening. Welcome everyone. Kind of just how I just asked earlier, how is your soul in this season where we know that life is lifing and the government is governmenting? How are you handling each and every day? Welcome you to Liberation Lab, where we review the sermon that was preached on the Sunday prior. This Sunday, your girl had been knocked out. The cold, the flu had tried to take me down. So I had to call my loving partner, the love of my life, the one who brings me joy, my sunshine in the rain, my wonderful husband, to come and preach for me on this Sunday. And he graciously joined us. He graciously joined in and preached. So, of course, he had to join us on this evening to talk about his sermon. So, I add to the stage the one and only Reverend Dr. Asterix, TLT. Welcome.
Good evening.
I found all new buttons. I love it. So, welcome you to the stage. Thank you for joining me tonight, babe, as we go over the context of your sermon. You preach, you like to use your sermonic hymn, not the traditional sermonic hymn that most people do with the choir. You have a particular way in which you preach, and your sermonic hymn always comes from a song. Now, I'm not sure if you
A
knew.
song, a play, movie, or piece of literature grounded in the African American experience, unless I want to mess with people and then I use the Rolling Stones or something like that.
Okay, all right. I stand corrected. Thank you. Um, this week, I don't think you knew, but Five Heartbeats is one of my top five movies. You didn't know that.
I did know that.
But you didn't know that the song that you use is my favorite. And you
That was a
introduced.
surprise because, again, it's the Five Heartbeats. You got 30 other songs with that was your favorite. Okay.
Focus here. I love the scene where his little sister was like, "What is the problem here? I'm trying to clean up. You trying to make albums. Focus on a plan here before we all get this whooping." And she begins to sing the lyrics of "We haven't finished yet," which you use from First Philippians, chapter 1, verses 1 through 4.
3 through 6, but close.
3 through 6. So introduce us. How did you kind of walk into this journey of your sermon?
So I was preaching for your anniversary, and it's also something I kind of started with Bethel, year 7, right? Bethel, and my 50th year of life sits at an intersection. And so as I began to start thinking about that, the year of Jubilee, the year of completion, 7 sevens gives us the Jubilee, all of the numerical or numerology and biblical stuff that people like to use. What is God calling us to complete in this year so that we can have the year of Jubilee, right? So in this year, what is God calling us to complete so then we can go into our year of freedom? So for me, God has been asking me to, hey man, finish that D, man. Stop playing. Get over yourself. Get over whatever issues or frustrations you have. Finish. Hey, go back and get your chaplain certification, which I'm working on. Go back and get into the CPE process, right? So you can have freedom and be free, and you won't go to your grave, especially somebody like me, with shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I won't make our life hard with shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I've completed the task. And so when you think spiritually, when you think in the church, especially now in your context, at 182 years, if you put that in the timeline of history, like that was pre-1850, that was pre-emancipation, pre-Jim Crow. The AME church wasn't but established barely 30 years at that point. And so what now is God calling Wayman to finish in this year? And so, of course, that took me to Philippians, where the apostle Paul,
He's
he
not
tells
focus on your sermon.
the apostle Paul, he writes to the congregation in Philippi that I am confident of this. Paul stayed confident. He just knew what he knew. That the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day of Christ Jesus. And so just reminding the people that God don't start anything that God doesn't finish. One way or another, God finishes. So that's kind of how I came to the concept. And then when I was thinking of what song to go, and for people who've never heard me preach, I pull these things from a Black experience, because if you're not really into the Bible, or and I hate to say it, a lot of our people, they recite the Bible, they don't study the Bible. By bringing in this cultural piece, it makes connections. And I do like that song, We Haven't Finished Yet. If you look at the placement in the movie, it was at a critical junction that, you know, I was wondering, was the Heartbeats ever going to make it? And they wasn't finished. And so though it's a love song, you can definitely apply it to other things.
All right, I love that. Let's get into it. Philippians 1:3 reads, I thank my God every time I remember you. There's something about sacred memory that I think we've lost within our society. A lot of times we want to remember, but we tend to want to remember things that are bad, or our memories want to float to how it didn't go well the first time, especially when we're considering our relationship with Christ. That we always want to go for the big thing that we ask God for. So in this moment, I'm aware that Paul is talking to the church of this time and having this conversation. And when we remember people, and a lot of times remembrance comes when they're dying. So I remember you in death. We can honor some dead folks. But what happens within that space of sacred memory when we can remember the people who have carried us through? Because bro was in jail. He's been through a lot, and this church was taking care of him. So let's go deeper into what does it mean when this sacred memory happens when people are alive and walking with you.
So I think you hit on something, wife, that is really profound, and that is we have to learn how to remember. And I think that we struggle with this notion of sacred memory, because we're in a season where we got to deconstruct everything, and so that does impact the sacred memory, right? And so I remember a couple of years ago, just as a point of illustration, when Barbershop came about 20 years ago, and folks was really struggling with the commentary on Rosa Parks. But it wasn't so much that it was the commentary on Rosa Parks, it was the desecration of the memory. And I think that was kind of one of those zeitgeist moments where whenever we remember something, we have to tear it down, right? And so once you start doing that, memory no longer becomes important. I think that, to your point, we don't reconcile or know how to deal with trauma in memory, and so you begin to suppress, right? A lot of times in our communities, and we both experienced this as pastors in these churches. There were memories that were repressed that really changed the course of how we pastored, right? And so I think of the late great Maxine Nichols down at Bethel, who said, "Hey, babe, you are talented, you are gifted. You ain't really bringing nothing new. We used to do these things. You just bringing them back." And that Sankofa moment really inspired me and pushed me to go forward, because I was like, well, if I'm doing something that's never been done, and I'm coming off like a mad scientist, right? At Wayman, you've learned that things in Bloomington have come out of Wayman. You've learned that there's a history, and so I think that memory is really meant to empower us. We have to learn to use memory appropriately. Now, I think the other challenge is memory can become a prison if you're not careful. So you begin to lionize. You begin to I mean, we struggle with it in the Zion. I remember back when the young preachers knew how to stand and shut up, and yeah, but
Before you go on this tangent, let me keep you centered here. I think where people find a challenge, it happens within integrated remembering. There's this theory, this concept called integrated remembering. And within integrated remembering, what happens is that, to your point, we have this, we pick and choose which memory to hold on to.
Mhm.
So I went through this issue, but then we release the resiliency that pushed us through. We release what we learned in the midst of it. So we lose this space of having an integrated remembering where, yes, something bad may have occurred during this time, but also we's preaching but God, right? But
Mhm.
there's something that occurred in the midst of it that I think we find in this simple verse of "I thank God for you." It's an integrated remembering that whatever was happening in Philippians at that time, Paul is in jail. So I can still remember what got me to the moment that I'm sitting in and still have gratitude for the money you put on my commissary. And a lot of times I think in this season, we're missing that, especially when big things are occurring, right? We know we're about to face a lot of challenges coming up, and we're forgetting to have that integrated remembering that moves us into a space of gratitude.
And so you're right. So especially if we want to keep it in the context of our history, uh, we have forgotten that we are the people that can fly. We have forgotten we're the ones that got over. We have forgotten in a lot of respects and ways that we are who we are. I also think that this lack of historical memory is also what creates the victimization. Because if I remember that I'm a champion, if I remember I'm a bad man, if I remember I'm on top of the world, then you can't keep me down. If I keep it uh, listed, like keep it in this subset, then you'll never rise above it. And so I think that's where, again, the spirit of Sankofa comes in. Memory is supposed to instill in you to project you, right? And so, um, do you remember? Remember the time. Do you remember? Right? That old Michael Jackson love song is supposed to inspire or make you remember what it was when we fell in love. And so, for us, Paul is saying in so many words, "Do you remember the time? Hey, I think of you every day. I thank God for you. These good memories are sustaining me through this dark time, because if I didn't have it, I wouldn't make it."
I love that because in verse 4, we go to, "In all my prayers for all of you, I always pray with joy." If we take that from a deeper biblical stance, I believe it is Greek. And the word for prayer it means kind of born from a deep need. And then Paul adds with joy. So it's this need based prayer that's saturated with joy that almost feels paradoxical. Like if I'm in need, when you think about being in need, you don't immediately go to a place of joy.
So this goes into a whole nother category. Joy is one of those. Humans are not like singular emotions. So I can be frustrated, or let's take the 6 basic human emotions: sad, mad, scared, peaceful, joyful, powerful, right?
Mhm.
They're not in opposition. They can actually work in concert. So Paul, while probably sad, mad, or angry at his condition, perhaps all three, at the same time, that sacred memory of what the congregation of Philippi meant to him and he to them to him and he to them, uh, invoke joy, right? And so the pastoral response to joy is an empowerment and affirmation. And so now he can go another day in the belly of the beast because I just had a thought of you. Um, it's akin to having a picture on the wall, right? It's akin to when I was working at Dollar General 30 years ago and making $4 an hour. I used to put Centrale's picture on the shelf because that got me through the night, right? I'm mad that I'm working at this menial job, but the joy that I'm doing it for my baby boy is keeping me going. And so I think when Paul is saying this, listen, I thank God, I think of you, I thank God because I'm writing with joy. It's this joy that's sustaining him to keep going because same God back then, same God right now.
Could we argue, and folks may walk away on this one, but could we argue when we look at futurism, right? That
Mhm.
in order to keep your joy, you almost have to quantum leap through your life in order to sustain that. That there has to be moments that you cannot always stay in the moment that you're in, but the ability to quantum leap from one place to the next, whether it's in the future, whether it's in the past, but having that kind of mystical arrangement of life in your mind to maintain joy at all times.
So I wouldn't disagree, right? I wouldn't disagree. Uh, that's my timeline theory that I won't say all on here because I don't want anybody stealing it. But I do believe spiritually, yeah, you quantum leap. I'm having a rough day at work. I'm in this space, these microaggressions, and literally I'll think our wedding day. That was a year and some months ago. But the joy will take me out of my body, put me back into that moment so I can get through whatever, and then I'm come right back, right? Or sometimes the leap takes you forward. One day I'm gonna get to the Great Wall of China, and it brings me joy, right? To think about that. And so I do like the way you put it, quantum leap, for those who may not remember his old sci-fi TV show where he jumped through different experiences into people's bodies. And I do think that throughout time, right? So he wasn't regulated to one particular time. And so I wouldn't disagree with you, wife, that sometimes joy requires that quantum leap to think back, to move forward, right? Memory is not linear in our identity formation is not linear. And so as we bounce around, we find spaces of joy. Most assuredly, Philippi wasn't the only thing that brought Paul joy. I think probably he sat in jail and thought about the time he talked about Peter and cussed Peter out, and that made him snicker. And then he was able to eat his meal. And then somebody came to visit him and they had a good laugh. And then these moments of joy help you kind of forget everything that's around you so you can navigate through.
So I'm glad you kind of mentioned other people, not Peter, because you know how I feel about that. But how important is it for us to have intercessory prayer for others?
I think it's critical, right? I don't think you can be a Christian of any persuasion and not pray for others. In fact, scripture tells us that we're required to do that and stand in the gap. Scripture is full of examples where we pray for each other and pray for other people. Moses stayed in the gap for the Israelites. Um, Jesus stayed praying for his disciples and others. You see it in the church. You see it throughout the New Testament. So I think intercessory prayer is critical in standing in the gap, because sometimes somebody may be going through something and they don't have the words, they don't have the emotional bandwidth, and you do, and you have privy, and sometimes you don't even need all the information. So I mean, I know we want to know everybody's business, but there's been people I've seen on the corner driving to work, And I seen no girl stand outside the CVS crying. I seen no boy walking up the street, tears in his eyes. I don't know. I ain't necessarily got to pull over to say, hey, God, you know their situation. You hear their groans and utterances, move on their behalf. Remove that which is making them grieve. And when you do that, I believe, and I've experienced, that you then begin to think about all the folks that prayed for you and all the people that stood in the gap for you. So I think about my mother, who, when I was at my darkest and lowest, I know for a fact she prayed for me. I know for a fact she kept my name before God. And so that does bring me a sense of joy. It's like, So I think intercessory prayer is, I don't know how you can be a believer and you have never stood in the gap for anybody. And I'm not talking that fake stand in the gap, Lord, help straighten their mind out and make them do what I want to do. I mean, we talked about that in Bible study. It's not that. I'm talking about, hey, God, I really need you to be with my friend who's going through some stuff and protect their heart from any hurt, harm, and danger, et cetera, et cetera.
That's good. That's good. Anything you want to add before we hit verse 5
Nope.
that you might have preached on? No? All right, so verse 5 says, because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. So he kind of gives them that day one. Y'all are my day ones. But we also know that the word partnership is much richer than kind of we convey. That it almost implies this shared participation within life.
Mm-hmm.
So partnership is more than just, hey, you were standing, to your point, you were standing next to me, but there was a shared moment across time that they experienced. As we think about Christians, do you feel like during this time we have shared moments, like we have partnerships with one another? Are you about to say something ignorant? Okay, Lord.
No, we don't. We so I think they're interpersonal partnerships, right? I of course am your partner. I think I have friends in the community who I partner with and do work. But if you're talking writ large, nah, man, it's is real politic as it gets. The way Paul is writing, right? Your partner. I remember I was somewhere and somebody literally told me, like, man, I want you on my podcast, but you ain't got no following. And I was like, damn, okay, true, because I don't really do this. Like, I mean, hell, I walked away from a radio show, right? I just don't have the bandwidth for it. But what could have come from that friendship, right? If we just would have let it been organic and not transactional. And this is why I say what I say once a quarter about friends and enemies, because I don't think they're true partnerships. I got folks that a year ago was my people. We was checking on each other. We was loving on each other. I ain't heard from them niggas since the wedding. And so I could be over here dead, could be over here tired, could be over here, and ain't nobody picked up the phone. Now, equally, because I'm an energy reciprocator, I ain't picked up the phone. That's not a partnership. And so I think the church now really does value the idea of, I've said this for years, especially as a man, I've not experienced authentic friendships and partnerships in the body of Christ. I got more of that from Black Studies, more of that from the street. And so I'm actually envious of what Paul writes about, because I would love to experience that. I would love to experience what it is to be able to say, because of your sharing in the gospel from the first day, like, who is my day ones? Other than Marlon Branch, I don't know. Like, so Cadrick, DK, like, I can name the day ones, but writ large, that's not been the case. And so I think Paul is saying something profound, that I founded this church. I've been gone, but y'all been staying in community with me, and y'all have had my back. And I really ain't been able to come back, but y'all have still loved me and carried me through. And so I think that, yeah, without going in circular too deep, I don't see a lot of the partnerships. But that don't mean they don't,
you think,
because that's just because I don't see it, that don't mean they exist.
no, I'm not saying they don't. I guess my thought is, a lot of times Paul describes what I've read before called an interpersonal neurobiology. And it's the reality that we literally develop within and through relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So to your part that the Philippians have this partnership, it represents this attachment that is like, I would call it an earned security that people develop. And I wonder because, and I don't know if this is just Central Illinois or what it is, but I wonder if because life, because age demographics, through generational changes within the church or within ourselves, that we lose this sense of this earned security that we find with people. So it's hard to develop these attachments, or it's hard to have these partnerships because we no longer live in a world where we are sharing the journey together. That I can see your kids grow up on Facebook and feel like I'm a part because I seen them when I was 2 and now they're 20. And I feel like I knew Mookie this whole time, but have never seen this child in person. I mean, you've seen people, I'm sure we've seen people in the world where we say, oh, they're my Facebook nephew, right? Never touched this child in life. The child has no clue who you are, but we don't have what we call secure attachments because that's just if I cancel my Facebook page, then I don't know what's happening with you and your kids, and we're now separated. So have we lost the interpersonal skills to develop partnerships, or have we lost the trust within the church that causes us to not have these interpersonal relationships in the body of the church? Because you said something before about Black studies, right? And it's not the first time I've heard it. Even my mother, who no longer is kind of in the ministry circle, I feel like has living her best life. She's found lifelong friends that after my father died, folks disappeared. Like, if you wasn't at annual conference, we don't know you. So I think that things like that occur if you're not, constantly in my space, but yet you can say you care. And have we reached a place within certain churches, because to your point, this isn't everybody, but in certain churches where we've lost the ability to do church together. My cousin Brooke says that. Do you do church? Do you do life together? Not church together. Do you all do life together? And do you think that's things that churches who are struggling, or people who are struggling in their congregations, like, I love my church, but I'm struggling here, is because we don't do life together?
So I'm hesitant to blame it on technology because my brother Devin, you would think he didn't have friends, but he go travel and see his Xbox homies all the time, right?
Right.
And Devin will tell you, like, I don't mess with nobody. He to himself at the crib, but he drove New York to see one of his homies, right? And they just went back and went to Texas, and they have these gatherings. Our son Charles, we found out all his friends from. So I'm hesitant to blame it on technology. I do think that it's a couple of things. One, the complicated but brilliant Francis Cress Welsing, the late Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, once said Black people don't develop relationships, they develop survival units to deal with some things. And then once the crisis abated, the unit dissipates. She was talking about family, relationships, friendships. White supremacy and capitalism doesn't give us the benefit to make these bonds. We make survival units. The second thing is that I think in the context of our Zion, because I can't speak of any other Zion, despite the lofty language, we are pitted against each other. That's why we got concept of the first church, right? And that's why we got these kind of things. And unfortunately, when you start those kind of rankings and hierarchy, you create in it, whether intentional or unintentional, we're going to start competing. The minute you start putting numbers and hierarchies, and that's my number one pastor, what a number 3 pastor hears that, and he like, man, I want to be number 1. And so where we would come together to do the kingdom work, we're now bickering. And so, and I'm not saying I don't want to play holier than thou. I can name on one hand the clergy that can call me and ask me for favors, because truth is, I want your spot at the table, bro. And so I think that the system in American capitalism does not allow for the interpersonal relationship. And then I also think that now, as a chaplain, as somebody works in human behavior, I do think that we have lost the ability to connect deeply for these reasons. And so I think about my demon experience, and I remember telling somebody, like, when I went back, it was right after the wedding. And I remember saying in class, and they was, oh, I'll be so glad to see you. And I was like, man, I ain't heard from you Negroes in a year. You can't have missed me. You can't have thought about me. You can't. And one of them was appalled. Like, I was like, I'm just being honest, bro. Like, the last time y'all saw me was January. I wasn't even married. It was January 24. Had this life experience, life, etc. Swing back around. Did it make me angry? Yeah, but I also realized, like, people just don't connect like that no more. And so I also think that that's why we got violence in the community. I can't go knock on somebody door and say, hey, man, your son out back wilding like it was back in the day. Don't tell me how to raise my kid, or they don't trust me. Or I see a little young lady walking home from the store, and, you know, I make sure she get home safely. What he doing with that little girl? So I think all of these things have kind of broken interpersonal relationships, and we just don't connect anymore. And so it becomes transactional or survival.
But let's dive deeper. As you mentioned, going to your chaplain state, what do you feel happens within us internally that causes us to lose the connection with others, or the inability to connect with others?
So you become isolated. You're resistant to help. You're resistant to change. Uh, you tend to bury your feelings. If you've reached out for years for help and nobody does it or comes to your rescue, you develop this, I'll do it myself, right? James Brown, great song. I don't want nobody to get me nothing. Open up the door, I'll do it myself. And so Brown is talking in this song both socially, but he's also talking personally. I don't want you to give me nothing because you're going to fail me. You're going to let me down. So it creates a cold heart. It creates a hardened heart. It really sucks away at your joy. And so when you meet folks that, hey man, you need help with that? I don't need help with nothing. Now, ironically, because I do it, and you do push me, we the first ones to yell, don't nobody help, right? Don't nobody got my back. Ain't nobody said nothing. But also we've been trained that ain't nobody showing up to help. So help ain't coming. Ain't no cavalry coming over the ridge. There's no superhero coming from the sky. You got to figure this out on your own. And sadly, for a lot of us, the data in life affirms this. And so I think it gives you a hardened heart. I think it makes you bitter. It makes you angry because, I mean, you winning, you doing these things, but ain't nobody there celebrating with you. Ain't nobody. So, it turns into a thing. It turns into a thing.
I got you. Let's round this thing out. Philippians 1:6a says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you. Dig deep into that.
So all of us have a calling, right? Nobody's born. We're born tabula rasa, meaning we have to learn, but all of us have a calling and a purpose. And so there's something that you're here to do, be it you're here to help somebody do something, you're here to achieve a goal. You have a life purpose, right? It could be specific, it could be general. And so God put that in you, and God has been working to get you to do those things. Now, us being who we are as humans, sometimes we lead a plan. It ain't that the plan was bad. So God meant for you to go to Hollywood and be an action star. You decided that you wanted to gangbang. Like, we make these decisions that kind of take us off the plan or out of alignment. And so, but yet God did put something in us for us to do. And so it's interesting that I find myself going back into teaching spaces in the community, doing stuff at the job. Teaching is my calling. I've always known that. God began a good work, and I went off and did other things, but God is bringing that around. And so I think Paul is reminding us in this passage that there is something good inside of all of us. The one that began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day. So not only will the work get started, at some point it's going to get completed. At some point, so God means for you to do a thing. At some point, you got to reconcile that. Now, I did warn your congregation that sometimes, somebody going into the promised land, it'll either be you or some of the folks tacked on to the Israelites when they left Egypt, but somebody going into that promised land. And so I think that's the asterisk. So if God called you to minister to the youth, etc., and you run from it, okay, yeah, I put that in you, but I need this work done. And so now put somebody else there to do it. And so it's a
Ooh, let's talk about that in people's bodies. So I know I've been called to this. I know this is what I'm supposed to do, and I'm not doing it, but I'm seeing it done by someone else. What does that do to a person?
So it depends. Like I think it in the ideal world, it should give you a wake up call. And so, because you're like, man, I should be doing that. So part of what got me playing with Hey Jen and stuff is because I was like, man, I should be doing this. Like I told somebody, I know history. I know, like, yeah, I should be doing this. And so it should light a fire under you and motivate you. Now, and it shouldn't make you jealous. It shouldn't make you hate a Negro. It shouldn't do any of that. But it should make you realize that you too had a purpose and calling, because multiple people can have the same calling. And that's why we got multiple teachers and doctors. So if you see something like that, and you're like, I've always wanted to do it. So there are things that that I've said I always want to do. And it's been in me. And then I see other people do it. It says, you know what? I hate to say it, but if that Negro can do it, then I should be able to do it, because I know I'm talented, gifted, called, beautiful smile. Like, I know these things. And so I should be able to do this. And so in the many ways, it lights a fire under me. When I see certain things and you hear me like that, no, let me get my act together. Let me lose this weight. I can't believe that's the nigga. Wow. Okay. So I do think that there's an element of that it should light a fire under you. But even in the community, like, God started a good work in us. It's going to get completed. It's going to get finished. Even the churches told Wayman, God started a good work when this church was created. The things we're supposed to do, we going to do them. Now, as I said in the sermon, are you Jonah pouting under the tree? Because Nineveh gonna get what it's gonna get. But are you an active part of it, or are you sat on sideline mad? And so I think this is a lot of our senior saints are learning this. You can try to bully God, you can hold your money, you can play these games, but if it's meant to grow, it's gonna grow. If it's meant to do what it's gonna do, it's gonna do what it's gonna do. And you really can't stop it. And so the work is gonna get completed.
So in 2 minutes, if you had 2 minutes to summarize the totality of your sermon and something you have not yet said, to the person who doesn't have the 45 minutes to watch, who can't sit through the 30 minutes of this and say, Pastor, what did you preach on Sunday? What would be your words of wisdom and grace for them?
2 minutes. There's something good inside of you. God put it there. Whether if you've achieved it or not, the work will be completed. 2 minutes is hard.
You haven't finished. Just a quick phrase. Elevator.
You haven't finished yet. And so, like the song says, you ain't finished yet. So if you're 70 and you want to start that ministry, start it. If you're 50 and you want to try out for WWE, try out. I mean, like, you haven't finished yet, because the day you're finished, we call that death. And so you haven't finished yet.
Thank you. Thank you so much for not only preaching for me and standing in the gap while I was trying to recover, but thank you for joining me on this evening for Liberation Lab. I hope someone has been blessed through this conversation. Please visit our website, where you can find our Bible studies and our devotionals that match. So there is a devotional that matches the sermon as well, that is posted on the website. We are www.wayman-amec.com. He is
www.Bethel AME Champaign, all one word, it's in the chat.org.
So thank you all for joining us on this evening. Thank you, Reverend TLT. I'll give you that Dr. Asterisk when I see some papers being written. We can work that out. But thank you, my love, so much for joining me on this evening. I love you deeply and dearly. Thank you to everyone who's watching. God bless you all. Have a wonderful week and find some joy this week, and may your soul have peace during this journey of life. Love you all. Bye.
Bye-bye.